The night my wife was drugged in her own living room, our son was standing right there helping them. That was the moment. Something in me broke. You think you know betrayal? Try watching the person you raised hand your life to strangers with forged smiles and fake papers. Try hearing them say, "It was for your safety." I'm Jose Ramirez, 60 years old, builder, driver, husband, and the man they tried to erase. If you're watching this, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you first heard my story. I want to know how far the truth has traveled, and whether you still believe revenge can be human. Because this isn't just about a stolen house. It's about what happens when a man who's lost everything decides to take back his name. The first thing I saw was my wife's face buried in her hands on the front porch, her shoulders shaking like she was trying to hide from the world. And that's how the storm began. I hadn't even turned the engine off yet. My old Toyota was still humming when my stomach dropped. Maggie never sat outside like that, not even on bad days. Not when the Atlantic wind cut through the street like broken glass. And certainly not streeting in the middle of the afternoon while a brand new black Escalade sat parked where our mailbox used to be. For a second, I thought I was in the wrong street. Then I saw the other car, a silver pickup truck I knew all too well. Luke's truck. My son. It was supposed to be a surprise. That day I'd finished my last ride early around 4. The app showed I'd hit my quota, and the winter light was already dimming. I thought, why not head home? I hadn't told Maggie. I never did. I liked to catch her off guard to see that light in her eyes when I walked through the door earlier than expected. It was our little ritual after 40 years of marriage. A small, stupid tradition that somehow made the years lighter. But that day, December 18th, the surprise was on me. I parked half a block down, my heart thudding like it used to when I was still pouring concrete on high scaffolds, back when danger came with a paycheck. I stepped out quietly, the air sharp and salty from the nearby dogs. From the open front door, I heard laughter, men's voices, women's too. The kind of laughter that doesn't belong in your house when your wife's crying outside of it. Something crawled up my spine. "Maggie?" I called softly as I approached. She flinched, startled, then looked up. Her eyes were red and swollen. "Jose," she whispered, "you're home early." "Yeah," I said, crouching beside her. "What's going on?" She shook her head, tried to smile. Failed. "It's nothing, honey." Just then, a man's voice echoed from inside. "Mom, come on. It's just paperwork. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." My chest turned to ice. I moved closer to the doorway. Through the crack, I saw Luke, my son, 36, tall, restless, with that same impatience he'd had since he was 10 and couldn't tie his shoelaces fast enough. Beside him stood Claire, his wife, holding a glass of wine. And sitting comfortably on my couch, like he owned it, Marcus Reed, Claire's father. Big man, big watch, big mouth. "Dad," Luke said when he finally noticed me, his smile faltering. "You're here." "Yeah," I said, stepping inside, apparently at the wrong damn time. The air in the room felt thick. Our living room smelled of perfume and cheap champagne. Maggie's knitting lay abandoned on the armchair. On the coffee table there were folders, pens, and a notary stamp pad. "What's this?" I asked, keeping my voice calm but firm. "What are you asking your mother to sign, Mr. Ramirez?" Marcus said, standing up like a politician about to shake hands. "Let's not start with hostility. We're just helping your family secure your future." "Secure it?" From what I shot back. Maggie stood behind me, clutching her cardigan like armor. Luke sighed, rubbing his temples. "Dad, please, it's not what it looks like. These are just precautionary papers, a transfer of title, a power of attorney. So if something ever happens to you or Mom, things won't be complicated." My eyes darted to the folder. The top page read, Property Transfer Agreement. I could see my wife's signature line, already marked with a sticky note. So I said slowly, You're telling me the house we spent 30 years building with our bare hands, the one I laid every brick for, after work weekends, holidays, you want to move it under your name? It's not like that, Luke stammered. It's exactly like that. Marcus chuckled, the sound slick as oil. Mr. Ramirez, you're misunderstanding. My wife and I only want to protect this asset. We've been through this process before for our own estate planning. If the house is under the kids' names, you'll avoid taxes, future nursing costs. I'm not planning to die this week, Marie, I said. And I sure as hell don't need anyone managing my house for me. Jose, Maggie murmured, tugging my arm. Please, I turned to her, saw the fear behind her eyes. Did you sign anything? She shook her head, tears threatening again. No. They've been pressuring me for hours, said it was for the best. Dad, Luke interrupted, his voice rising. We're trying to help you. You're not getting younger. What if one of you gets sick? What happens then? What happens, I said quietly, is that we handle it like we've always done together, without you taking what isn't yours. The words hung heavy. Marcus's fake smile began to slip. Claire looked at me like I'd insulted her bloodline. Luke, I said, staring straight into his eyes, take your wife and her parents and leave my house. No one moved. Then Marcus leaned forward, his voice low, controlled. You're making a mistake, Mr. Ramirez. I know people who can make this transition painless, or very painful if you prefer. I took one step closer to him. You're in my living room threatening me in front of my wife. You should leave before I forget my manners. His smirk faltered. Fine, he said finally. We'll give you time to think. But you'll come around. Everyone does. He picked up his coat, motioned to Claire. Luke hesitated, eyes full of shame, or maybe anger. Dad, I was only thinking about everyone's future, he muttered. Our future isn't for sale, I said. And it's sure as hell not yours to negotiate. They filed out one by one. The sound of the Escalade engine starting was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. When the door finally shut, Maggie let out a sob that sounded like it had been trapped in her for years. I sat down at the table, staring at the leftover papers. My hands trembled, not from age, but from rage. On the notary page, I saw something faint. Notary, Public L, Daniels County of Bristol. An address printed on the footer. A plan forming already. They had this all planned, I said under my breath. They didn't come to visit. They came to take. Maggie looked at me, her face pale, eyes hollow. Jose, what are we going to do? Reached across the table, took her cold hand. What we've always done, I said. We fight. We protect what's ours. Outside, the Escalade's headlights faded down the street, swallowed by the fog rolling in from the ocean. I could still hear their laughter echoing faintly like ghosts in the salt air. Inside, violence pressed down like the weight of a whole lifetime, suddenly under threat. That night, long after Maggie fell asleep, I sat alone in the living room. The papers lay on the table beside me. My eyes kept going to the notary's name, to the signature line, where they wanted my wife's hand. In 40 years of marriage, I'd seen Maggie cry maybe a handful of times, but never like that. Never with shame. I looked around our small house, the pictures, the scuffed floors, the kitchen table, where we'd eaten every meal for 3 decades. Every nail, every board, every corner of this place had a story, a piece of us. And now, someone had tried to steal that story. I poured myself a coffee, though it was already close to midnight. The ocean wind rattled the windows, and somewhere in the distance a buoy bell rang faintly through the fog. That sound used to comfort me. Tonight, it just reminded me that storms don't always come from the sea. I've seen a lot of things in 60 years, but I'd never seen my son look at me like I was a stranger in my own home. Luke stood there with his sleeves rolled up, half drunk, pretending this was a family meeting and not a goddamn ambush. His smile, crooked forced, it didn't reach his eyes. Claire sat beside him sipping wine, like she was watching a play she'd already rehearsed. Her parents, Marcus and Evelyn Reed, occupied our couch as if it had always been theirs. Maggie stood by the window, wringing a napkin between her trembling hands. The Reeds had money. Or at least, they liked people to think they did. Marcus wore one of those navy suits that looked like it cost more than our car. Evelyn was a sculpture of pearls and perfume. Everything about them screamed one thing: people who never worked a day in their lives, but know how to take what they want from those who did. "Mr. Ramirez," Marcus said, rising from the couch with a hand extended. "We didn't expect you so soon." "Clearly," I said, not taking it. "What's all this?" He smiled, the kind of practiced grin men like him wear when they are closing a deal. "Just some paperwork. A few documents that'll make everyone's life easier down the line." "Easier for who?" I asked. "For your family," he said smoothly, like he'd rehearsed it in the mirror. "Luke and Claire have been worried. You're still working full-time at your age, driving strangers around this cold town. What happens if, God forbid, something happens to you or Maggie? You could lose everything. That's where we come in. Estate protection, asset management. We're here to help." "Help," I repeated, glancing at the table. A neat stack of papers sat there. On top I saw transfer agreement, printed in bold. Below it, a logo: Harborfield Notary and Associates. A blue stamp, official looking, but something about it was off. The ink too bright, the seal too perfect. Maggie's voice broke through. "They said it's just a precaution, Jose. Something to keep us safe, if we ever need safe." From what I interrupted, turning to her. "From our own son." Luke's face flushed. "Dad, come on. Don't make this dramatic. Nobody's taking anything from you. We're just formalizing things." "I talked to Marcus." "You talked to Marcus," I repeated slowly. "And you decided to bring lawyers and notaries into my house without even calling me first, Dad." "No," I said sharply. "You listen. This house isn't a stock portfolio. It's our life. I built it with these hands. Every damn brick, every nail. There's no line on a spreadsheet that measures that." Marcus let out a small laugh, polite but full of disdain. "You're a passionate man, Mr. Ramirez. I respect that. But passion doesn't protect assets. Paper does." I turned to him. "You ever carried cement in the rain, Mr. Reed? You ever spent nights praying your next check clears so your kid can stay in school?" He didn't answer, just smiled tighter. "Jose," Maggie whispered, pulling my sleeve. "Please don't." But I couldn't stop. "Not now. This man's trying to sell me fear, and my own son's buying it. What's really going on?" "Luke," Luke exhaled hard. "Dad, I'm trying to help. You think I don't see how tired you are? You're 60, still driving people to airports at dawn. You think that's sustainable? Mom told me you've been behind on your insurance. What if you lose the house over a hospital bill?" It hit me then. He'd been listening to their words, their poison. They'd taken his concern and twisted it into a weapon. "You think these people care about us?" I said. "They don't even care about you. They care about property leverage signatures." Evelyn stood, finally joining the conversation with that syrupy tone people use when they talk to children or old dogs. "Mr. Ramirez, no one's trying to hurt you. But you have to understand, at your age, control is complicated. We're offering peace of mind." "Peace of mind," I said. "You're offering theft with better handwriting." Her smile stiffened. Marcus cleared his throat. "If you'd just let me explain the documents, I can read just fine." I picked up the top sheet. This one says you'd become temporary custodians of our property in the event of diminished capacity. And this, I held up the next page. This is a blank notary form with my wife's name already printed. You call that protection? Marcus's eyes darkened for the first time. You've got a temper, Mr. Ramirez. That's not wise at your age. I took a step closer. Neither is lying in my home. Dad, Luke said again, this time quieter, pleading. Don't turn this into a fight. Son, I said, voice steady but low. It became a fight the moment you walked in here, without respect. Maggie reached for Luke's hand, tears in her eyes. Please, both of you, this isn't worth it. But it was. It was everything. I turned to her. Did you sign anything, Maggie? Anything at all? She shook her head quickly. No. But they asked me to. They said it was only for taxes. Marcus exhaled, annoyed now. We're wasting time. Mrs. Ramirez, you'll regret not signing today. I can guarantee you, once this offer expires. Offer, I snapped. You make it sound like you're selling us a car. He smiled coldly. A house is just another asset, Mr. Ramirez. You either control it, or someone else will. For a heartbeat, I almost lunged at him. Instead, I looked straight at Luke. You hear him, son? That's the man you brought into my house. Luke's jaw clenched. I was trying to make things better. Better, I said, for who? The silence that followed was the heaviest sound I'd ever known. Then Maggie, trembling, whispered, Please, all of you, just leave. We can talk later. Marcus gathered his papers, though he left one page half buried under the wine glass. We'll go, he said smoothly. But you should think carefully, Mr. Ramirez. You can make this easy, or you can make it very, very hard. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. They left, Marcus leading the way, Claire clinging to his arm, Luke trailing behind, not even daring to look at me. I stood by the door and watched them walk to their cars. The Escalade purred to life. The pickup coughed awake. For a long time, the only sound in the house was Maggie's quiet sobs. I sat down at the table again, staring at the half-empty wine glasses and crumpled napkins. Then I noticed it, the page Marcus had left behind. A notary letterhead, faint blue stamp, photocopied signature lines. Except the signature was already there. It wasn't Maggie's, but it was hers. Or rather, a perfect imitation. I felt the blood drain from my face. The stamp wasn't real, it was printed, not embossed. The seal's circle uneven, the text misaligned. They hadn't come here to propose anything. They'd come to execute a plan already in motion. They already forged it, so I muttered, holding the page in my shaking hand. Maggie looked at me, horrified. What do you mean? I mean, this isn't about convincing us anymore, I said. They've already started taking what's ours. Outside, tires crunched on the gravel as the SUVs disappeared into the fog. Inside, the paper trembled in my hand like a living thing. That night, when I finally sat down with a magnifying glass and a cup of cold coffee, I saw something else in the corner of the photocopy, a name I didn't recognize, L. Daniels, Notary, Public County of Bristol. And next to it, a date, 6 months ago. 6 months. Long before today. My chest tightened as I stared at the ink, realizing the truth piece by piece. This wasn't just betrayal. It was premeditated. Signed, sealed, and already halfway to being stolen. And for the first time in my life, I felt something I'd never felt toward my own son. Fear. I didn't sleep that night. Not a minute. The coffee on the table went cold 3 times, but I kept drinking it anyway, 1 cup after another, as if caffeine could stop the thoughts from eating me alive. Maggie had finally drifted off, her head on my shoulder, but every time she stirred, I could feel her fear in the way she gripped my sleeve, like a child afraid I might vanish. The paper lay in front of me. That damned photocopy. The ink shimmered faintly under the lamp, the notary's name, L. Daniels, printed at the bottom. It looked harmless, official, even, but to me it was a knife. Someone had already forged her name 6 months ago, long before any of us knew we were being hunted. By 6 a.m., I couldn't stand the silence anymore. I needed to move, to do something. I called Tommy first. He answered on the second ring, his voice still thick with sleep. "Josemon, it's Sunday." "What the hell? I need a favor," I said, pacing the living room. "You know any lawyers who aren't crooks or idiots?" Tommy chuckled. "That's a tough ask around here. But yeah. Aaron Collins helped my cousin last year with an inheritance mess. Young smart, doesn't flinch easy. Send me her number." He paused. "Jose, what's going on?" "Family trouble," I said flatly. "And not the kind that goes away with an apology." By 8:30, I was parked in front of a small office near the town market. Collins and Dyer Legal Services was painted in fading gold letters on the window. Inside, the smell of burnt coffee and printer toner hung heavy in the air. Aaron Collins was younger than I expected, 33, maybe 34, but her eyes were sharp, the kind that measured everything before speaking. She wore a plain gray suit, no jewelry except a thin silver watch. "You must be Mr. Ramirez," she said, motioning me to sit. "Tommy told me you had an urgent matter." I slid the photocopy across her desk. "Someone tried to steal my house." For the next 20 minutes, I told her everything about Luke, the Reeds, the papers, the fake notary stamp. I left nothing out, not even the parts that made me sound naive. She didn't interrupt once, just took notes with a calm precision that gave me some small piece of air to breathe. When I finished, she leaned back. "Mr. Ramirez, I wish I could say this is uncommon, but it isn't. Financial elder abuse is everywhere, especially through family channels. What you've described fits a pattern." She flipped the paper toward her. "This stamp is printed, not embossed. Likely a fake. But the notary name L. Daniels means something. It suggests they've already filed or drafted a document using your wife's signature." My chest tightened. "How do we find out?" "I'll contact the county notary registry. If any document was filed under your wife's name, we'll know, and we'll revoke it immediately." I nodded slowly. "And the law? What can we do?" She began ticking items on her fingers. "First file, a revocation of power of attorney that nullifies any authority your son might claim. Second, place your home into an irrevocable trust. That means nobody, not even you, can transfer it without explicit legal procedure. Third file, a criminal complaint for attempted forgery and coercion. Finally, start documenting everything." Documenting. She smiled faintly. "Recordings, messages, conversations. You're in a one-party consent state, Mr. Ramirez. That means you can legally record any conversation you are part of. Keep your phone ready. If they come back, let them talk. They'll hang themselves with their own words." I stared at her, surprised at how coldly calm she was. "You sound like you've seen this before." "I have," she said. "And I've seen how ugly it gets when people don't act fast." Something about her voice reminded me of myself 40 years ago, focused, steady before time wore down the edges. When I left her office, I drove straight to the police station. The building was small, same cracked steps as 20 years ago. Behind the desk stood Chief Riley, back then just Eddie, the neighbor who used to fix his bike in front of our house. He was 54 now, broader around the middle, but the same no-nonsense eyes. "Jose," he said, coming around the counter. "Man, it's been a while. Wish it were under better circumstances," I said. "Got a situation." We sat in his office, and I told him everything again, from the forged paper to the Reed's threats. He listened carefully, rubbing his jaw, the way he always did when thinking. "I can send a patrol to keep an eye on your place," he said finally. "But until they actually take something, or commit direct fraud. It's a civil issue. My hands are tied, so they have to rob me first before you can do anything. That's the law, my friend, he said with a sigh. But keep your cool. Record them like Aaron said. Build a trail. If there's forgery, we'll make it criminal. I nodded, standing up. Thanks, Eddie. Appreciate it. Jose, he said as I reached the door, these people read right. I've heard things. Real estate guys, lots of shady land deals near the waterfront. Be careful. They don't play fair. That didn't surprise me. Nothing would not anymore. When I got home, Maggie was sitting at the kitchen table, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Her coffee was untouched. She looked like she hadn't moved since I left. What did they say? She asked. We've got a lawyer now, Aaron Collins. She's good. And the police, they'll keep an eye on things. But mostly it's on us. Her lips trembled. Jose, what if what if something's already signed? I hesitated. I didn't want to scare her, but there was no point in lying. Then we undo it. Aaron's checking the notary records right now. She nodded slowly, though her hands were shaking. I feel so stupid, she whispered. They were here for hours and I almost believed them. I walked over and placed my hands on her shoulders. They prey on good people, Maggie. That's their business. But they picked the wrong house this time. Her eyes filled with tears, but there was something else there too, anger. What do we do next? First thing I said, we change every damn lock. I called Sam Ortiz, an old buddy from my construction days, who'd become a locksmith. He arrived before sunset, toolbox in hand. Bad timing for family trouble, huh? He said as he started removing the door latch. Is there ever a good time? I muttered. He chuckled softly. Fair enough. By nightfall, the house was different. New locks, reinforced hinges, a pair of small security cameras by the front and back doors. Sam's idea. You can monitor from your phone, he said, setting up the app. Motion alerts, video recording. Simple but solid. When he left, the place felt safer. For a minute, anyway. I found Maggie sitting on the couch, staring at her phone like it was some alien object. You okay? I asked. She looked up, a mix of shame and determination in her eyes. Jose, teach me. Teach me how to use it. The recording, the alerts, everything. I smiled faintly. You sure? I'm tired of being scared, she said. I want to know what's happening. I want to help protect what's ours. So I sat beside her and showed her how to open the camera app, how to set alerts, how to press record without drawing attention. Her hands trembled at first, but she learned fast. By the time she finally smiled again, really smiled, I realized something had shifted. She wasn't just the woman they tried to trick anymore. She was my partner again, my equal, ready to fight. We went to bed close to midnight. The fog outside pressed against the windows, the house creaking like an old ship bracing for a storm. I was almost asleep when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was Aaron. I answered, heart already tight. What is it? Her voice was steady but tense. Jose, I checked the registry. There's a general power of attorney filed under your wife's name, dated 6 months ago. My throat went dry. That's impossible. The signature looks authentic, she said quietly. Too authentic. I sat up in bed, staring into the dark. Aaron, I whispered, what if someone already forged my wife's name months ago? There was a pause on the line. Then her voice came grim and certain. Then, Mr. Ramirez, this isn't just family trouble anymore. It's a crime. By the next morning, our little house had turned into a war room. Aaron moved fast, faster than I'd thought a lawyer could. By noon, she'd sent over draft documents for the irrevocable trust, the updated will, and a revocation of power of attorney. Every paper was a small wall built between us and the people trying to tear us apart. If there's any evidence of coercion, She told me over the phone Luke automatically loses inheritance rights. It's called a conditional disinheritance clause. It's harsh, but it protects you. Harsh, I said, signing my name on another line is when your own son tries to sell your roof. Meanwhile, Maggie made coffee for Sam Ortiz the locksmith and our old neighbor, who was crouched by the front door, replacing the final deadbolt. He was 62, built like a tank, with hands as rough as sandpaper, but precise as a surgeon's. "You sure you want triple reinforced locks?" he asked. "This is overkill." "That's the point," I said. He chuckled. Good answer. He'd already installed small cameras above the porch and the back patio. "They're motion triggered," he said, showing me the app on my phone. "You'll get an alert if anyone even breathes near this house." That afternoon, while Sam packed up, I walked into the kitchen and found Maggie sitting at the table, phone in hand, frowning at the screen. "Need help?" I asked. She looked up, smiling shyly. "I'm trying to remember how to open that camera app again." So we sat together shoulder to shoulder as I guided her fingers through each step. She laughed when she accidentally took a selfie. Her hair, a little messy, eyes tired but bright. It had been weeks since I'd heard her laugh like that. When she finally learned how to arm the system and record on command, she said quietly, "I'm not going to be the woman who just watches while people take what's hers. Not anymore." I took her hand. "That's my girl." The peace didn't last. Around 4, my phone rang. Luke. For a long moment, I just stared at his name on the screen. I didn't want to hear his voice, but I needed to know what they were planning. "Dad," he said when I answered, his tone too light, too rehearsed. "Claire and I are coming by. We've got something important to show you and Mom." "No," I said flatly. "You're not." "Come on, Dad. It's not like that. This is good news. Last time you had news, you brought a forged deed into my house." He sighed. "You're being paranoid." "Just listen." "I'm done listening," I said. "If you show up here, the police will be waiting." He went quiet for a second. Then softer, "You don't want to make this worse, Dad." The line went dead. I called Erin immediately. "They're coming," I said. "Don't let them in," she warned. "If they try anything, call Chief Riley." "I'll head there right now." 15 minutes later, Maggie's phone buzzed with a motion alert. 2 vehicles had pulled up in front of the house, a silver truck and a red compact ZU. She looked at me, her voice trembling. "They're here. Stay inside," I said. "Lock everything." I slipped out the back door, circling around the yard, staying out of sight. From the corner of the porch, I could see everything. Luke stood on the steps, his hand raised to knock, flanked by Claire and 2 strangers. A woman in her 40s with an official-looking clipboard, and a man in a white lab coat. "Who the hell wears a lab coat to a front porch?" I muttered. Luke knocked hard. "Mom." "It's Luke. Open up. We need to talk." Maggie didn't move. The cameras caught everything. After a pause, the woman spoke in a smooth official tone. "Mrs. Ramirez, my name is Monica Vega. I'm a licensed social worker. We received a report from your son, expressing concern about your mental and physical well-being. We're just here to do an evaluation." Concern. That word again, always their disguise. Maggie's voice came muffled from behind the door. "We didn't request any evaluation. Please leave." "Mrs. Ramirez." The man added, voice too deep, too forced. "I'm Dr. Harlan. We're only here to help. If you refuse cooperation, we may have to contact the authorities." That was when my blood went cold. Contact the authorities, that was the setup. They wanted to stage non-compliance film. It'd make it look like Maggie was unstill or unfit. Luke gestured to Claire, who pulled out her phone and started recording. "Mom, please," he said loudly, glancing at the camera. "You're not well. We just want to make sure you and Dad are okay. I gritted my teeth and pulled out my own phone, pressing record. Chief Riley, I whispered, calling him. They're trying to force entry with fake officials. I'm on my way, he said. Stay calm, Jose. Don't confront them until I get there. But it was too late for calm. Monica Vega started pounding on the door. Mrs. Ramirez, if you don't open up, we'll have to file a wellness check with county service. Do you really want that kind of trouble? Inside, Maggie's voice was trembling, but firm. I've already called my attorney. She's on her way. That made Monica freeze. She turned to Luke, whispering something I couldn't hear. Claire's camera caught it all, her lens shaking slightly. Then headlights appeared at the end of the street, 2 cars pulling up fast. One was Aaron's black sedan, the other a police cruiser. Luke noticed them too late. Chief Riley stepped out firsthand, resting casually on his belt, his badge catching the afternoon light. Afternoon, he said, voice calm, but unmistakably authoritative. Mind telling me what's going on here? Monica straightened up, suddenly nervous. Lieutenant, we're conducting a wellness evaluation under the Adult Protective Services Act. Riley cut her off. Funny thing, ma'am. I called APS on my way here. They've got no record of any visit or any employee named Monica Vega. Her face drained of color. Aaron joined him, heels clicking on the pavement. Miss Vega, she said smoothly, you work for Lyle and Drexler, don't you? Small firm in Camden that specializes in asset recovery disputes. Marcus Reed's go-to people. Vega's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Riley nodded to his officer. We're going to need to see some identification. The man in the lab coat, Harlan, took a nervous step back. There's no need for this license, and Riley said again, voice sharper now. I left it in the car, the man muttered. That's fine, Riley said. We'll check it there. Aaron turned to Luke, who looked trapped between fear and defiance. Luke, this is elder coercion and attempted impersonation. You need to leave before you make it worse. He swallowed hard, glancing toward his truck. I was just trying to help, he muttered. Riley motioned his officer forward. Everyone stay where you are. As the officers started checking IDs, I stepped out from behind the porch column. Dad, Luke said when he saw me, his voice small. I ignored him. Instead, I raised my phone and aimed it at Monica Vega. You said earlier, my son contacted you through Marcus Reed, didn't you? She froze. I didn't say yes, you did. I said, taking a step closer. You said Mr. Reed will make sure you're paid well for this. Remember? Riley looked at her sharply. Is that true? She turned pale, stammering. It was just an arrangement. A consultation. I didn't mean, but it was too late. My phone had captured every word. Riley's partner cuffed the fake doctor first, then led Vega to the patrol car. Aaron stood beside me, arms crossed, watching as the little performance collapsed. When it was over, Riley turned to me. We'll take them in for questioning. Vega's name will help us connect this straight to Reed. You did the right thing recording that, Jose. I nodded, my pulse still racing. Maggie opened the door, then eyes wide with fear, but also relief. I walked over and held her tight. It's over, I said quietly. For now. Riley and his officers drove off with the imposters. Luke and Claire left too, faces pale, saying nothing. Inside, Aaron sat at our kitchen table, reviewing the video I'd captured. Vega's voice was clear. Mr. Reed said this would be easy. Just follow the script and get them to open the door. Aaron exhaled slowly. That's it, she said. This is the kind of evidence that can sink them. Maggie poured her a cup of coffee, her hands finally steady. So this is over? She asked. Aaron looked at me. No, she said softly. This was just their first movie. Later that night, I saved the recording in 3 different places: my phone, the cloud, and a USB drive hidden inside my old toolbox, because I knew what was coming next. You don't corner snakes like the reeds and expect them to slither away quietly. 2 days after the imposters were taken in, Erin called with the kind of voice that told me she'd barely slept. "Jose," she said, "the forensic report just came back." I gripped the phone tighter. "Tell me." "It's confirmed. The signature on that power of attorney is forged. The handwriting analysis shows tracing marks and inconsistent pen pressure. Whoever did it was good, but not perfect." I sat back, exhaling slowly. Maggie was sitting across from me at the kitchen table, watching my face like it held the verdict of our lives. "It's fake," I said to her. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Thank God." But Erin wasn't finished. "There's more. The notary listed on the document Lopez has admitted to verifying the signature without proper ID. Says he remembered seeing your wife, but couldn't recall checking her driver's license. He'll testify if needed." "Why would he risk that?" I asked. "Money, probably. Or pressure. Either way, I've already filed the formal forgery complaint and revoked the power of attorney. As of today, legally no one but you and Maggie can touch that property." For a moment, I let the words wash over me like rain after a drought. It wasn't victory, not yet, but it was ground under our feet again. Still, Erin's tone darkened. "The accomplice you recorded, the woman Vega mentioned, being paid by Marcus Reed through a notary contact. I traced it to a ledger entry under a shell company called Coastal Heritage Holdings. It's registered under Marcus's wife, Evelyn." "Jesus," I muttered. "They built a business out of this." "Yes," Erin said. "And I think your family isn't their fierce target. I've been digging through county records. There are other seniors all recently transferred property through the same notary." I felt the air leave my lungs. So they've done this before. That's what we're going to prove. That afternoon, Erin came by with a woman I didn't know, mid-40s. Auburn hair pulled into a neat bun, holding a small recorder in one hand and a notepad in the other. "Jose, this is Lee Harper," Erin said. "She's an investigative reporter from the Bristol Chronicle." Lee offered a firm handshake. "I've heard about your case from one of your neighbors, Sam Ortiz. He's worried this might be part of a larger pattern. I'd like to cover it with your permission. Sometimes public pressure does what the courts can't." I hesitated. "You think going public helps us?" Lee gave a small smile. "Bullies like Marcus Reed hate sunlight. I've written about real estate scams before. Once the story's out, they'll have to defend their reputation. They'll make mistakes. They always do." I looked at Maggie. She nodded. "Let them feel what it's like to be exposed." And so for the first time in weeks, I opened the door to someone new. Not a lawyer, not a cop, but someone armed with words and truth. Lee sat with us for hours, her small recorder quietly blinking red as she listened. She didn't interrupt much, just occasionally asked for dates, names, and little details. The smell of the wine that day, the color of the paper, how Maggie felt when she saw Luke bring those strangers to our porch. By the time she left, the evening light had gone pink over the ocean. "You two have something powerful here," she said before walking out. "Not just a case, but a warning." I watched her drive away and felt for the first time like our story wasn't buried anymore. Still, the nights didn't get easier. Luke started calling again. Sometimes he was drunk, sometimes stone-cold sober, but always shifting between guilt and denial. "Dad," he said one evening, "I didn't know Marcus would go that far. He told me it was just paperwork, a safety thing." "Stop lying, Luke," I said. "You signed it. You brought those fakes to our house." "I didn't know they were fakes," he snapped. "He said they were professionals. And when they tried to drug your mother, that was professional too." There was a silence so long, I thought the line had gone dead. Then a low, defeated whisper. I made a mistake. You made several, I said. Now fix them. But I could tell by his voice. He didn't know how. Meanwhile, Aaron's investigation deepened. Every day brought a new piece of the puzzle, a forged deed here, a coerced signature there. The Reeds had a pattern target older couples convinced them to secure assets under their children's names and then refinance or yawl behind their backs. They hid it all behind shell companies with nice-sounding names: Harborfield Trusts, Heritage Development, Silver Bay Holdings. When Lee published the first article, Seniors Scammed by Local Developers, Forged Notary, Ties to Reed Enterprises, the town buzzed like a hive kicked open. The photo of Marcus and Evelyn on the front page, smiling beside a ribbon-cutting ceremony, now carried a caption that read like an accusation. Marcus went silent. But silence, I'd learned, was never peace. It was planning. To prepare for whatever came next, Aaron insisted we take a few additional steps. They're going to try to paint you and Maggie as incompetent, she said. We need to get ahead of it. She scheduled geriatric and neuropsych evaluations for both of us. At first, Maggie hated the idea. They're not going to treat me like a senile old woman. They won't, Aaron said gently. But when the Reeds claim you didn't understand the documents, we'll have medical proof that you're perfectly sound. You'll be bulletproof in court. The tests were exhausting hours of memory recall, logic questions, physical coordination exercises. But the doctors were kind, and at the end they smiled. You both scored higher than average for your age, the geriatrician said. Sharp as ever. It was small, but it felt like reclaiming something they'd tried to take our dignity. For a few days, things were quiet. Too quiet. Then one Thursday afternoon, Maggie went out to visit a friend across town. I was finishing a ride near the pier when the camera alert buzzed on my phone. Motion detected at front door. I opened the feed. The timestamp read 2:41 p.m. The camera showed Luke alone standing at our porch. He looked around, then pulled something from his jacket. A key. My stomach dropped. He unlocked the door and went inside. Maggie, I whispered, dialing her number immediately. No answer. I called again. Nothing. I watched the feed helplessly as Luke disappeared inside. 10 minutes passed, then 20. The camera caught him leaving, looking pale, frantic, wiping sweat from his forehead. Still no Maggie. When she finally came home 2 hours later, she looked disoriented. He was here, she said softly, sitting down at the table. Luke. He said he just wanted to talk, but I don't remember everything. What do you mean? I asked. She pressed her temples. He offered me tea. Then everything went fuzzy. My blood ran cold. I pulled up the footage and showed her the moment he arrived. She covered her mouth. He used the old key, she whispered. The one I thought I'd lost. Not lost, I said grimly. Taken. That night, I sent the footage to Aaron and Chief Riley. This isn't about property anymore, Aaron said when she called back. It's escalation. Whatever they are planning, it's getting dangerous. I stared at the screen, showing my son walking into my house, my wife's image blurred in the doorway, my whole world shrinking into a grainy video feed. I didn't know what Luke had done, or what Marcus had promised him, but I knew one thing. The storm we'd been preparing for had finally started, and it was coming straight for us. The call came at 10:42 a.m. On a gray Tuesday. Maggie's phone went straight to voicemail. At first I thought nothing of it. She'd told me she might run to the grocery store, maybe stop by the community center. But an hour passed. Then 2. By noon I'd called her 10 times. No answer. I tried Sam. I tried the neighbor across the street. Nobody had seen her. By 1:15, panic was crawling up my throat. My hands shook so bad I almost dropped the phone. Then ping. A motion alert from the security app. I opened the feed. There she was, Maggie, stepping into a white sedan parked by the curb. Her movements were slow, clumsy, like she'd been drinking or was half asleep. Luke was at her elbow, helping her into the back seat. Claire sat in the passenger side. My heart stopped. I zoomed in. The license plate, a temporary dealer tag. The driver was a heavy-set man in glasses wearing a stethoscope. Within seconds, my phone buzzed again, text from Luke. Taking Mom to see Dr. Perez. She seemed confused this morning. Don't worry. We'll handle it. Handle it? I was already in my car before I even realized I'd moved. The Corolla's engine screamed as I tore out of the lot. Every red light felt like a personal insult. I called Aaron, called Riley. No answer. Called again. Left messages that barely made sense. They took her, Luke and Claire. They said, a doctor, please find them. By the time I hit the driveway, the front door camera lit up again. Motion detected. I parked halfway on the curb and sprinted to the porch, phone streaming live. The feed showed my living room. Luke. Claire. The man with the stethoscope, Dr. Perez, supposedly standing near Maggie, who sat slumped in the armchair. Her head lolled slightly, her eyes half open, but unfocused. I didn't remember getting inside. 1 second I was at the door. The next I was in the living room shouting. What the hell is going on here? Luke jumped. Dad. Jesus, you scared me. Don't dad me. What did you give her? Claire's tone turned defensive, icy. She's fine, Jose. We called Dr. Perez to do a mental capacity evaluation. It's standard for families dealing with cognitive issues. She doesn't have cognitive issues, I roared. She's fine. The so-called doctor cleared his throat. Sir, please lower your voice. Mrs. Ramirez was agitated, so I administered a mild sedative. It's perfectly safe. My gaze snapped to the coffee table. A small amber pill bottle. The label half scratched off. I picked it up. Where'd you get this? That's confidential medical information, he said. I'll show you confidential medical information, I muttered, stepping forward. Dad, Luke shouted, moving between us. You're overreacting. Mom's been forgetting things. She couldn't remember her own phone password this morning. She was tired because she didn't sleep. She was confused, Dad. I just wanted her to get checked out. You're too close to see it. I could barely see through the red in my eyes. I turned to Maggie, crouched beside her. Mags. Hey. It's me. Her pupils were dilated. She smiled weakly. Jose, you're early. My throat clenched. What did they do to you, sweetheart? She's fine, Claire snapped. If you don't stop yelling, I'll have to call. You'll call who? I shouted. The police. Good. Because I already did. Right on cue, tires screeched outside. Then the familiar slam of a car door. Chief Riley burst in first, followed by Aaron. What's happening here? Riley barked, hand on his holster. This man, I said, pointing at the fake doctor, drugged my wife without consent. These two helped him. That's a lie, Claire said. We were helping. She was having an episode of Mom. Step aside, Aaron said sharply. Riley turned to the man. Name Dr. Perez, he stammered. I have ID. Let's see it. The man hesitated, then handed over a flimsy-looking card. Riley studied it for half a second. Then his eyes narrowed. This ID expired 4 years ago, and the license number belongs to a dentist in Providence. The man's composure cracked. Jesus Christ, Aaron muttered. He's not even a doctor. Luke looked stunned. Wait, what? Riley stepped forward. You're under arrest for impersonating a medical professional, unlawful administration of medication, and trespassing. As the officer cuffed him, the man broke. It wasn't my idea, he cried. I was told to. I was told to make her sign something, just act professional. Keep her calm. Who told you? Aaron demanded. He hesitated, eyes darting to Luke. Reed. Marcus Reed. My stomach turned to stone. Riley's jaw tightened. You're gonna write that down at the station. They led the man out, his fake stethoscope bouncing against his chest. The silence that followed was unbearable. Maggie stirred in the chair, groaning softly. Jose, I knelt beside her. I'm here, sweetheart. You're safe now. Her eyes fluttered open, cloudy. I thought Luke was taking me to a clinic. He said I just needed vitamins. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Don't talk. Just rest. When she finally drifted into a shallow sleep, I turned to Luke. He stood in the corner, face pale, shaking. I didn't know, Dad. I swear to God, I didn't know they'd stop. I said quietly. Stop lying. I didn't, he said, voice cracking. Marcus said it was legal. He said Mom needed an evaluation for the trust to go through. He promised this guy was licensed. Erin folded her arms. So you arranged a fake doctor to drug your mother in her own living room. Luke's eyes filled with tears. I thought it was harmless. Riley stepped closer. You need to come with us, son. Now. As he reached for the cuffs, Luke looked at me, desperation twisting his face. Dad, please don't let them arrest me. I didn't mean to hurt her. I couldn't even look at him. My voice came out low and hollow. You already did. The click of the cuffs was like a nail in the coffin. Claire started babbling that they'd been misled, that Marcus handled everything. No one listened. When Riley's men led Luke toward the patrol car, he turned his head, speaking through clenched teeth. Dad, I didn't have a choice. Marcus loaned me money. He said if I didn't cooperate, he'd ruin me. He owns everything. He said he'd make sure you'd lose the house anyway. What money? I demanded, stepping closer. What the hell are you talking about? But the car door shut before he could answer. Riley turned to me. We'll sort this out at the station. I'll make sure that bastard Reed can't get within 10 miles of you. When they were gone, I walked back inside. The house smelled faintly of antiseptic and fear. Erin crouched beside Maggie, checking her pulse. She'll be okay, she said softly. He gave her something mild. It'll wear off in a few hours. I nodded, staring at the pill bottle still sitting on the table. The label had one word written in sloppy black marker: Calm Aid. My hands shook as I picked it up. I'd built this home brick by brick, laid its foundation with my own hands. And now it had turned into a stage for betrayal, for poison, for fear. Through the window I could see the patrol car's lights fading down the street. And in that silence, a new truth sank in, one heavier than all the rest. My son wasn't the enemy anymore. He was a casualty. Marcus Reed was the one holding the leash. And for the first time in my life, I swore to God that I'd break it. The holding cell smelled like bleach and despair. From behind the glass, Luke looked smaller than I had ever seen him. His hair was a mess, his face drawn, his eyes darting like a man trying to wake up from a nightmare he built himself. Across the table, Chief Riley slid a folder toward me. The DA's office is moving forward, he said quietly. We've got statements from the fake doctor, from Vega, from the notary. And with Lee Harper's article out, the Reeds are under real heat. If you and Maggie want to press full charges, it's a done deal. Your son will go down with them. I didn't answer. The words felt heavy in the air. Riley softened his tone. You've been through hell, Jose. You don't owe that boy anything. But I did. In every way that mattered, I did. Erin sat beside me, her tablet glowing faintly under the fluorescent lights. There's another option, she said. A restorative deal. If Luke cooperates, testifies against Marcus and Evelyn Reed, we can negotiate a deferred sentence. He'd avoid prison if he meets strict conditions. What kind of conditions, I asked. He'd have to fully cut contact with the Reeds, testify in detail about the conspiracy, and submit to counseling, restitution payments, and community service. Any violation, he's back in court. No mercy left. I leaned back, rubbing my temples. I hadn't slept in days. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Maggie slumped in that chair, her hand cold, her voice slurred. I saw Luke's face when they cuffed him. And somewhere between those two images was every missed baseball game, every night I stayed on a construction site instead of home for dinner. Jose, Aaron said gently, this isn't about forgiveness, it's about leverage. The DA can't pin the Reeds without Luke's testimony. Riley nodded. They were careful, used intermediaries, shell companies, fake notaries. Luke's the thread that unravels it. I exhaled, staring through the glass at my son. He looked up, then meeting my eyes. There was no defiance left. Just shame. That night, after Maggie was settled at home and the house was quiet, I sat on the porch staring at the ocean. The air was heavy with salt and regret. Maggie came out with 2 mugs of tea and sat beside me. For a while we didn't talk. The waves said enough. Then she whispered, he's still our boy. I stared straight ahead. Our boy almost killed you. I know. Her voice cracked, but she didn't look away. But I also know what Marcus Reed can do to people. He finds the weak spots. He offers easy paths. Luke's always wanted shortcuts. I nodded. That's on me too. I made work my whole life. I thought paying bills was enough. I never taught him the cost of things. You taught him honesty, she said. He just forgot it for a while. I turned to her. You want to forgive him? No, she said simply. But I don't want him destroyed either. I want him to face what he's done, and I want him to stand up after. That's the punishment he deserves, to rebuild himself without anyone's lies. I looked back at the dark sea waves crashing like the sound of blood in my ears. Then, that's what we'll do. The next morning, Aaron arranged a meeting at the county prosecutor's office. The room was cold, windowless, filled with paper and tension. A young prosecutor named Harper, no relation to the journalist, sat across from us, flipping through files. Mr. Ramirez, she began, we're prepared to proceed with felony charges against your son, Luke Ramirez, and against Marcus and Evelyn Reed. However, your cooperation and your son's testimony could strengthen the state's case significantly. Define cooperation, I said. He'll give us everything, she replied. Emails, payments, meetings, every conversation, every transfer. He'll help us prove conspiracy. In exchange, we'll recommend a plea deal, probation, therapy, restitution. No jail time if he stays clean. Riley folded his arms. It's not leniency, it's strategy. Marcus and Evelyn are the sharks. Luke's a pawn who finally realized he's on the wrong side of the board. Aaron looked at me. It's your call, Jose. I took a long breath. Bring him in. Moments later, they led Luke into the room. No cuffs this time, but his hands trembled. He couldn't meet my eyes. He sat down, whispering, I didn't think you'd come. I almost didn't, I said. He swallowed hard. Mom, okay. She's alive. That's more than I can say for what's left of this family. He nodded, eyes red. I'll tell them everything. I swear. I studied him for a moment, the slump of his shoulders, the wreckage of a man barely 36 and already broken by his own greed. Here's the deal, I said finally. You cut every tie with the Reeds. Divorce Claire if you have to. Get a real job. Testify. Make restitution. And you go to counseling, not for the court, for yourself. You screw up once, and I'll stand in that courtroom myself to make sure they throw the book at you. You understand? He nodded quickly, tears spilling. I understand, Dad. You start today, I said. You helped the DA take down Marcus Reed. You helped clean up the mess you made. Then maybe you'll earn back a piece of who you used to be." When he looked up again, there was something different in his eyes. Not defiance, not guilt, just exhaustion. "Thank you," he whispered. "This isn't forgiveness," I said quietly. "This is your last chance." The prosecutor signaled to an aide. "We'll draw up the cooperation agreement." As we stood to leave, Riley clapped my shoulder. "You did the right thing, Jose." I wasn't sure. It didn't feel right. It felt necessary. That night, after Maggie went to bed, Erin called. "We got word from a contact inside Reed's legal team," she said. "They know Luke's flipping. Marcus is furious. Evelyn's trying to negotiate a private settlement, but they're scared. And desperate people make dangerous moves." I stared out the window at the dark outline of our street. "What kind of moves?" "They're claiming they have a sealed estate instrument, something you supposedly signed years ago, transferring partial rights to your property, to one of their shell companies. If it's real, it's buried deep. If it's fake, they'll make it look real." My stomach turned. "Another forgery." "Maybe," Erin said. "But if they can produce an older document with your signature, it could complicate things. I'll need to see it before I can counter it." I hung up and sat there for a long time, listening to the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint crash of the waves beyond the street. A sealed document. A new trick. Another war waiting to start. They were losing, and now they were going to dig up ghosts to fight back. And as I looked toward the quiet bedroom, where Maggie slept, I knew this fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. The courthouse smelled like old stone and burnt coffee. Reporters lined the steps, microphones, flashing like angry insects, shouting names, mine, Maggie's, Luke's, and of course, Marcus Reed's. Lee Harper stood a few feet away, with her notepad tucked under one arm, nodding at me as we passed. "Almost there, Jose," she murmured. "Stay steady." Inside, the air felt heavier, part courtroom, part battlefield. The DA's team sat at one table, papers stacked in careful towers. Erin stood beside them, calm, crisp, and unflinching. Across the aisle, Marcus and Evelyn Reed looked like they'd just stepped out of a country club catalog, tailored suits, polished smiles, their attorney whispering in Marcus's ear. But behind those smiles was panic. I could smell it. The grand jury had been convened after 3 months of investigation. Today, depositions would begin, the first public step in a process that could decide everything. Luke sat at the end of our table, pale but composed, a trembling water bottle in his hand. I hadn't spoken much to him since the deal. He was cooperating now, yes, but guilt had a way of sticking to the skin, no matter how often you tried to wash it off. Erin leaned toward me. "They're going to hit you with everything, Jose. Character attacks, financial lies, whatever they can find. You hold steady no matter what they say. The truth's on our side." I nodded, though my hands wouldn't stop shaking. The first witness was a handwriting expert, an older woman with silver hair and a professor's poise. She testified clearly, showing blown-up exhibits of Maggie's real signature beside the forged one on the power of attorney. The forgery exhibits consistent pressure tremors and mismatched stroke orders, she explained. "It's a simulation, someone tracing over a reference." Marcus's lawyer stood for cross. "Doctor, is it possible the signer simply had a shaky hand that day?" The expert smiled faintly. "Not unless Mrs. Ramirez suddenly forgot how to spell her own name." A ripple of quiet laughter moved through the room. When she stepped down, Marcus shifted in his seat, jaw tightening. Evelyn whispered something to him. He didn't answer. Then came Luke. He took the stand with visible dread, raised his right hand, swore the oath. Erin gave him a small nod, steady, almost maternal. "Mr. Ramirez." The prosecutor began. "You worked with Marcus Reed on what he called family roost planning. Correct. Luke swallowed. Yes. And can you explain to the court what that actually entailed? He hesitated, then exhaled. He targeted older couples, usually parents with only one child. He'd convinced the son or daughter that putting assets in their name was safer, less risk from taxes or scams. Then he'd file documents, transferring partial ownership to shell companies he controlled. Sometimes he used fake doctors, fake social workers, to make it look like the parents were losing competency. The courtroom went still. Even the reporters stopped scribbling. Did you assist in these activities? Luke's eyes closed for a second. Yes. I didn't understand at first. I thought it was legal, just paperwork. But when he told me to find a notary willing to skip ID verification, I knew it wasn't right. And the forged signature on your mother's power of attorney. His voice broke. Marcus had Evelyn handle it. She said it had to look authentic. I went along with it. I thought if I helped him, he'd clear my debt. Your debt? Luke hesitated again, glancing at me. I gave a small nod. Yes. I owed Marcus money from a gambling loan. He told me the house was the collateral. Gasps echoed in the gallery. Aaron rose for redirect, walking slowly toward the witness stand. Luke, you've testified that Marcus Reed used coercion and financial leverage to manipulate you, correct? Yes. Would you recognize his voice if you heard it? He nodded. Aaron pressed a button on the projector. The courtroom filled with the scratchy audio from my hidden recording months earlier, the moment when Vega's accomplice admitted being paid by Reed. Luke's face tightened. That's him. Marcus shot up from his seat. Objection. Overruled, the judge said evenly. Aaron turned to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the sound of coercion. Not a misunderstanding. Not a family dispute, a calculated crime. For the first time, Marcus looked cornered. He leaned toward his lawyer, whispering urgently, his perfect composure cracking. During recess, I stepped into the hallway, every nerve in my body buzzing. Maggie was seated on a bench nearby, her small hands wrapped around a thermos. When I joined her, she looked up at me and smiled softly. You did good, Jose, she said. I didn't do anything, I murmured. Luke did. She nodded. He finally told the truth. That's something. But before I could answer, Erin came striding out of the courtroom, her expression hard. We've got a problem, she said. Riley followed right behind her, holding a brown envelope. Marcus is trying to shift the narrative, he said. He just filed a counterclaim accusing you of embezzlement. What? I blinked. Embezzlement from what? Apparently, Aaron said he claims you took a personal loan from him years ago and never repaid it. Says you used company funds from his development firm back when you worked construction contracts. I laughed in disbelief. That's insane. I never took a dime from him. Riley opened the envelope. Inside were photocopied papers, ledgers, signatures, a note supposedly from me, acknowledging debt. My stomach dropped. It looked real. Aaron frowned. They're trying to show a pattern, that you were the one manipulating him, not the other way around. It's smoke, but if we don't disprove it fast, it'll stick in the jury's mind. That night after the day's session ended, I drove home numb. Maggie tried to talk, but I barely heard her. I went into the garage, sat down beside my old toolbox, the one I had used for decades. Dust, rust, the smell of oil and salt. I don't even know why I opened it. Maybe instinct. Maybe desperation. Inside, under a pile of old nails and a cracked measuring tape, I found a worn brown notebook. The edges were curled, the pages yellowed. My old job ledger. I flipped through it, heart hammering. There, March 2014. Marcus Reed. Material advance $3,000 verbal agreement. I'd written it in my own handwriting back when we were both still working men. He'd needed supplies for a renovation he never finished. He'd promised to repay, but never did. There was no signature, no contract, just my note proof that the only loan between us had been the other way around. I grabbed my phone, snapping photos of the page, sending them straight to Erin. Her reply came fast. Perfect. Bring that notebook tomorrow. It's our bulletproof vest. The next morning, court resumed. Erin presented the notebook under evidence. The handwriting expert confirmed it was mine. The date authentic, ink age consistent. Marcus's face turned the color of wet clay. His lawyer objected, but the judge waved him off. The record shows that Mr. Reed's claim lacks foundation, the judge said sharply. Proceed. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. The rest of the day unfolded like slow thunder. Erin dismantled Marcus's alibi point by point, his bank transfers, his shell companies, his phone logs. The jury watched every minute of it, like spectators at a slow-motion car crash. When the session adjourned, the Reeds looked hollow. But as I was gathering my papers, I saw something strange. Evelyn slipped a folded note into a court aide's hand. He carried it to Luke. Luke frowned, opened it, read, then went pale. He turned to me, voice shaking. Dad, they're not done. I frowned. What do you mean? He showed me the note. A single line written in Evelyn's elegant cursive. We still own the ground beneath your town. He swallowed hard. They've been buying the surrounding lots, Dad. Empty houses, old motels, land near the docks. They can push zoning changes, force buyouts. They're planning to strangle the whole community. My blood went cold. It wasn't just about us anymore. Marcus Reed wasn't just trying to ruin my family. He was trying to own everything. And the next round, I realized, wouldn't be fought in court. It would be fought on the very land we'd spent our lives building on. The verdict didn't bring applause. It brought silence. When the judge read the words guilty on counts of conspiracy, fraud, and coercion, there was no cheer, no fist pump, no cinematic swell of strings, just the slow exhale of a courtroom that had been holding its breath for too long. Marcus Reed sat stone-faced, eyes fixed on the table in front of him. Evelyn dabbed her tears with a silk handkerchief that couldn't hide the tremor in her hands. Their attorney looked beaten, his voice flat, as he muttered about appeals and restitution. Luke sat behind the prosecution bench, pale but composed. He didn't look at them. He didn't look at me either. When the gavel fell, ending months of hearings, Erin turned to me and whispered, "It's over." But she knew as well as I did it wasn't really over. Not for the town. Not for us. The Reeds didn't go to prison for decades the way I'd once fantasized. Marcus got 8 years, Evelyn 5, both reduced with restitution agreements and fines that stripped them of nearly everything they owned. But their company, Harborfield Development, was dissolved. Their assets were seized. Their beautiful waterfront office now sat boarded up, its glass logo shattered by someone who couldn't wait for justice to take the slow road. Lee Harper's final article called it a fall from Marble Heights. It wasn't revenge porn, it was truth journalism. She wrote about systemic greed, about how Marcus and Evelyn's fraud had thrived in the cracks of family trust and aging vulnerability. She wrote about us too, but not like victims. She called us survivors who refused to vanish quietly. I kept that newspaper folded in the kitchen drawer under the good cutlery. Luke moved out of the county after the trial. With Tommy's help and Chief Riley's quiet pull, he got a job at the Coastal Transit Cooperative, managing driver schedules and maintenance records. A modest job, humble pay, but honest. Claire filed for divorce 2 weeks after sentencing. She never showed up at court again. Part of me pitied her. The rest of me didn't have room left for pity. Luke called every Sunday now, sometimes to talk, sometimes to sit in silence on the line, as if hoping forgiveness might sneak in through the background noise. Maggie always answered, her voice steady. "We're proud of you for staying clean," she'd say. "Keep doing the work." She never called him son again, not yet. Maybe not ever. The house was safe now, sealed under an irrevocable trust that no one could touch. Aaron had made sure of that. The papers were locked in a small fireproof box in my closet, along with Maggie's wedding ring receipts and a photograph of our younger selves standing on the same patch of land before the foundation was even poured. Every night when I closed that box, I felt a small pulse of peace. Healing came in strange shapes. It came in therapy sessions at the community center, where other seniors shared stories of manipulation by family advisors and friendly bankers. It came when Sam Ortiz, the locksmith who had changed our locks, volunteered to teach older residents how to install their own security cameras. And it came one breezy morning when Maggie picked up her phone, pointed it at the ocean, and said, "Show me again how to go live." We were standing on the pier, the gulls loud, the waves churning silver under a pale sun. She held the phone with both hands, squinting at the screen. "All right," I said, showing her the buttons. "See that little red circle? That's the record. And this one, go live, lets people watch in real time." Her eyes widened as the counter ticked up, one viewer, then 3, then 10. Neighbors, friends, even Lee Harper joined the chat. Maggie laughed, that soft musical sound I hadn't heard in months. "Look, Jose," she said, showing me the screen. "They're all saying hi. They can see the pier. You're famous now," I teased. She shook her head. "No, just free." I'll never forget that moment. Maggie standing there in her wool coat, phone raised against the horizon, live streaming our ordinary morning to a handful of kind strangers. After everything they'd done to make us feel powerless, that simple act, her voice reaching out to the world again, felt like rebellion. Within months, the Senior Guardian Network was born at the community center, a small group of retirees, teachers, and volunteers who'd had enough. They helped seniors review legal documents, flagged predatory contracts, and worked with local police to track scams. Aaron became their legal advisor. Lee covered their launch in the Chronicle, calling it "the town that fought back." Tommy helped too, offering free rides to seniors who couldn't get to City Hall or the courthouse. "Nobody's taking advantage of my passengers again," he said. Sometimes I joined their meetings, though. Mostly I just listened. Watching people take what nearly broke us and turn it into something that protected others, that was the kind of justice I could believe in. Life didn't snap back to what it was. It never does. Some nights, I still woke sweating, dreaming of forged papers and slurred voices. Maggie still locked the doors twice before bed. But there was laughter again. There was coffee brewing in the mornings and gulls crying above the waves. And there was Kitty, the kind that didn't feel like emptiness anymore. Then one late afternoon, months after the final hearing, the mail came. Among the bills and charity flyers sat a thick cream-colored envelope sealed with wax. No return address. I almost threw it out until I noticed the faint embossed letters at the top corner, J.W. Holdings, LLC. The same name that had appeared in Marcus Reed's shell company list during discovery. I slid it open carefully. Inside was a letter, written in shaky, deliberate cursive. "Mr. Ramirez, you don't know me, but I worked for Marcus Reed for 12 years as an accountant. I read about your case. You should know it wasn't just your town. He had partners across 3 counties. There are other trusts, other families still at risk. Enclosed are copies of ledgers and correspondence. If you still care to fight, these will help. But be careful. Some of the names are powerful people. I'm sorry for my silence." DCCC. Tucked behind the letter were 3 photocopied pages, financial transfers, false trust instruments, notarized signatures from towns I'd never heard of. I read them twice, maybe 3 times, until the sun dipped below the horizon and the paper turned gold in the fading light. Maggie found me there, still holding the letter. "What is it?" she asked softly. I folded the pages, slid them back into the envelope. "Evidence," I said. "And maybe the next fight." She sighed, half weary, half resolute. "You're not done, are you?" I looked toward the ocean, the same one that had seen every rise and fall of my life, and felt that old fire stir again, quiet but alive. "No," I said, "not yet." And as the tide crept in, under the pier, the gulls wheeling above like witnesses, I realized something. Justice wasn't a finish line. It was a road long, uneven, and meant to be walked again and again, one weary step at a time. It's strange, the kind of quiet that comes after a long fight. Not the silence of absence, but of peace earned the hard way, like breath after a storm. I still drive my silver Corolla most mornings. The steering wheel's worn smooth, the seat molded to my shape, and every time I pick up a passenger, I remember that work, honest work, has a rhythm that keeps a man steady. There's dignity in that, a kind that doesn't fade even when everything else does. Some writers ask about the news articles. A few even recognize me. "Aren't you that guy who took down those real estate crooks?" And I just smile. I tell them it was a community effort. Because it was. The Reeds' names are poison now. Marcus's face once stared down from billboards, selling luxury living by the bay. Now his company's assets are frozen, his golf club membership revoked, his cronies under investigation in 2 other counties. Evelyn's serving her time quietly, her lawyer promising cooperation. The restitution fund they were forced to create, the one Aaron fought tooth and nail to include, now pays for legal aid for seniors in 3 towns. That was our revenge. The money that once corrupted now shields others from harm. I call it the sweetest payback imaginable, justice without cruelty. Luke's part of the story is slower. There are no redemption speeches, no cinematic hugs. Just small, deliberate choices repeated every day. He rents a small apartment above a mechanic's shop now. Tommy checks on him, sometimes says he's punctual, polite, quieter than before. Luke's been attending group counseling twice a week. He pays a percentage of his wages to the restitution fund voluntarily. When Maggie and I finally agreed to meet him, it was in public, neutral ground. A diner off Highway 4. The kind with chipped coffee mugs and a waitress who calls everyone on. He was already there when we arrived, standing by the window, hands clasped. The years had settled on him, heavier than they should have at 37. "Mom, Dad," he said softly. Luke. Maggie replied, not unkindly, but not warmly either. We sat. The waitress poured coffee for everyone. Silence filled the booth, awkward but necessary. "I don't expect forgiveness," Luke said finally. "I just wanted you to know I'm still trying. I'm going to counseling, paying back what I can. I've been volunteering at the center, helping with the senior watchdog group. It feels good. For once." Maggie studied him for a long time before speaking. "Trying is a start," she said. He nodded, eyes wet. "I know words don't mean much anymore." "They don't," I said quietly. "But habits do." He looked up, surprised. "Keep showing up," I continued. "Keep doing what's right even when no one's watching. That's how trust is built. Not with apologies, but with consistency." He nodded again slowly. When the check came, Maggie reached for it. Luke gently stopped her hand. "Let me," he said. "A small thing." But small things are where change begins. Weeks turned into months. Maggie's hair grew whiter, her laugh lighter. She took her live stream walks every other Sunday, now showing the pier, the goals, the thrift market, where she and her friends hunted for books. People from all over the county watched, sending hearts and messages of support. One comment stuck with me. "You remind me of my parents. They lost their house to people like that. Thank you for fighting back." That That was when I realized our story had already outgrown us. It had become a kind of cautionary anthem for those who thought dignity faded with age. At the community center, the Senior Guardian Network kept growing. Aaron chaired quarterly workshops on fraud prevention. Chief Riley spoke about legal rights and reporting OIs. Even Luke started attending, quietly helping with the logistics, staying out of the spotlight. Sometimes I'd stand in the back and watch him move chairs, hand out flyers, listen. There was humility in his posture that hadn't been there before. One evening, after everyone left, he walked up to me. "I saw the new trust fund numbers," he said. "Do you know how many people they've helped already?" I shook my head. 42, he said, smiling faintly. 42 couples kept their homes because of that fund. I didn't say anything, just patted his shoulder. It was the first time in years I'd done that. He didn't flinch. Sometimes when the night's quiet enough, I still hear Marcus Reed's voice in my head, the arrogance, the certainty that he'd never lose. And then I picture him now, sitting in a county correctional library, watching his ember rot, knowing that the money he once used to steal from others now pays for their protection. That's my revenge. Not his suffering, but his irrelevance. One Sunday I came home early from driving. Old habits die hard. The sun was low, bleeding gold through the palm trees that lined our street. Maggie was on the porch, humming softly, phone in hand, her live stream still running. She turned as I climbed the steps. "You're early," she said, smiling that same smile I fell in love with 40 years ago. "I know," I said. "Thought I'd surprise you." She laughed, the sound of peace, of survival. "Still with your surprises, sis, huh?" "Always." I sat beside her. The porch boards creaked under our weight. We watched the sunset together, quiet, except for the ocean's murmur and the distant cry of gulls. The house behind us glowed in the fading light, the house we built brick by brick, every wall holding a memory, every scar a story. It wasn't just a place anymore. It was proof. Proof that you can be broken and still stand tall. Proof that dignity once claimed never really leaves. Maggie leaned her head on my shoulder. "Do you ever think about what comes next?" she asked softly. "Every day," I said. "But not with fear anymore." She nodded. "That's enough." We sat there until the sun disappeared completely, the world painted in violet and amber. The phone on her lap buzzed, a stream of hearts and comments from people watching our quiet little porch in real time. I looked at the screen and smiled. "Guess the world's watching us grow old," I said. "Let them," she replied. "Maybe they'll learn something." I squeezed her hand gently. And as the last light faded and the waves whispered below, I thought of how it all began, with a man who loved surprising his wife. Back then I did it for her smile. Now I do it for something deeper, to remind myself that even after everything we lost, we never lost us. Because in the end, that's the truest revenge, not anger, not power, not victory, but surviving with grace, and still having someone to come home to. If our story reached you, if it made you believe in second chances, share it. Not for us, but for someone else who might need to hear it tonight.